Coming up on Mississippi Roads from the Hattiesburg Zoo, we're taking a look at animals across the state. We learn about the least tern population on the coast. We fly away with some dogs looking for a home, and we visit an exotic pet sanctuary.
Down Mississippi Road, Mississippi Road.
Hi, welcome to Mississippi Roads. I'm your host, Walt Grayson. And this week we're coming to you from the Hattiesburg Zoo. And the reason we're here is because the entire show we're going to be maybe not talking to the animals, but we're going to be talking about animals. Now, for instance, in the zoo, there are 91 species of animals. 41 of them are birds, like the ones back behind me here. These are Chilean flamingos. And the natural habitat for the Chilean flamingo is tropical heat, warm, swampy areas, shallow lakes. In other words, they love Mississippi. And at our first story, we're going to meet some other birds who make Mississippi their home. About an hour south of here on the beaches down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast, there's a large population of least tern. And in this story, some volunteers are going to show us what it takes to maintain their habitat.
We have a lot of different habitats here that we don't have in other parts of the state. So we have the sand beaches, we have the open water, we have these tidal marshes where the tides fluctuate. So we have all these marsh birds that you don't see in other parts of the state. One of the things that's really unique about the coast is a lot of the birds, for example, that would breed up in Tupelo, they actually migrate south in the fall and they migrate all the way across the Gulf of Mexico. And so a lot of the forested habitats here right along the coast are really critical for those birds making, it's about an 18 to 24 hour nonstop flight all the way across the Gulf of Mexico. And then some of the birds that breed here actually migrate all the way to the tropics. So we always have lots of birds around.
There's good birds here all year, and a lot of birds that you can't see in a lot of other parts of the country. You know, not just right on the beaches, but just inland a little bit. You know, there's a lot of great, songbirds that live in the forest. A lot of wonderful marsh habitat, for marsh birds. Least terns are one of a handful of species that we refer to as beach nesting birds because they lay their eggs right in the sand, typically in the bare sand, away from vegetation. There is something about the Mississippi, especially Harrison County sand beach, that really attracts the terns. They really do well here, and it's actually a globally important bird area for the species because it's such a hot spot for them.
Mississippi is known as the least tern capital of the world because there's more least terns here than there are anywhere else that nest here. And this stewardship program has been going on since the 70s. So it's not something that just popped up. This is something that there was a lady named Judy Tubes, and she actually started the Coast Audubon Society.
They realized that the terns nesting on the beaches, it was the largest known nesting colonies of least terns anywhere in the world.
The eggs are very hard to see, especially if it's not just pure white sand. If there's any kind of debris on the sand, it's very, very well camouflaged. But they're therefore also easily overlooked by people. So that's the main reason why we have to sort of rope off the colonies, because if you're not aware that if you're not looking at your feet very carefully, you could easily step on a nest.
Nest 131, 2 eggs.
But if people get too close to the colonies or walk through them anyway, it disturbs the birds. And if that happens too many times, especially in the heat of the day, that leaves those eggs exposed. It's very important that the birds are on their nest or on their young chicks to keep them from overheating. It doesn't take long in the summer sun here for those eggs to cook and become unviable or for the chicks to die from exposure. US 90 runs right by the beaches, so we don't get a lot of things that least terns in other areas experience, like coyotes, raccoons, etc., that eat eggs and chicks. So we saw a new hatch today. So yesterday, this nest number 90, had it was a 2-egg nest. The way that they're so colonial and so social during the breeding season, it kind of synchronizes everything. And as part of their strategy, we talked a little bit about how vulnerable their nests are right on the ground, but part of the reason that they like to nest in these groups is to form a group defense. If you try to walk through them, you'll get swooped, you'll get pooped on, and they just get angrier and angrier as the season goes on. Once they have little chicks, they get very aggressive. But when there are a lot of them, this is a very effective deterrent for potential predators. And especially the large colonies, large dense colonies that I've seen this year. It's just amazing to see how, gulls that try to get in that colony, they just can't. They just get chased off. The least terns will try generally up to 3 times. They'll, if they lose their first eggs, they'll try again. If they lose those, they'll try a 3rd time. And many of these birds had already tried several times even before the storms hit. So Tropical Storm Cindy, it was pretty devastating for our colonies. And at the time of the storm, we had still 1,000 nests out on the beach and 600 chicks. Half of those were the little downy guys, very, very vulnerable. Every single colony that we had was flooded, and all but 4 of those nests were flooded, completely gone. Virtually all of the downy chicks were drowned.
That's one of the things that there's not really anything that we can do about as far as protecting the birds from the storm. So the storm surge came in and we lost about 99% of the nests and also the downy chicks.
3 did not hatch, but 1 did hatch. It hatched on the 4th of July, possibly at night, at one of the busiest colonies where, there was just fireworks going off all over the place. Police and stewards were out there trying to manage the situation, trying to keep the fireworks from getting too close, and there were brush fires. But this little chick made it through the night. So we named him Sparky. For a while, he was our only chick on the coast for a couple weeks. And he or she, we don't know, but it survived and is now out there flying. I find them very charismatic. They're so tiny, but they're so feisty, and they're so resilient. They've tried and tried again and again this year in the face of so many problems, and they're still just trying to pump out those little tiny chicks, and they're just so adorable. It's hard to tell people you should care about the least tern because, to those of us who do, it's kind of self-evident. If you don't care about the least tern, I would say, as a general community, could maybe respect each other's values. They're kind of a lot of birds we kind of use as a sentinel species for ecosystem health. So we have these terns here. It's a globally important bird area because of them, and I think that's something that as a community we should be proud of. It has the potential to draw in tourists, and it's a sign of good ecosystem health, which can impact things that other people might value, even if they don't value the birds directly. They depend on the water, on the Gulf, on the fish populations. So it's all interconnected.
Here's my new buddy Craig. Craig is a Galapagos Tortoise. He's kind of a big fella, but he's just a kid. He's only 25 years old, and these tortoises can often live to be well over 100. And he's such a nice guy, he shares his habitat with emus. Emus are kind of like ostriches in that they are feathered birds. They have little bitty wings, but they're flightless. In our next story, we're going to meet some normally flightless animals who, through the help of some special volunteers, are flying to new homes.
Hi, I'm Jeff Wall. I'm a pilot. I fly recreationally and fly for Pilots and Paws. I'm based in Mississippi. I actually started pretty late in life. I was in my 40s before I started taking lessons and learning to fly. And I'll tell you, I greatly regret waiting that long. And so my advice for anyone who's interested, who thinks they might be interested to fly, I usually say, if you think you are, you are. Having spent years actually of flying with an instructor, training and learning, and I kind of like, where do I go now? I kind of honestly ran out of good excuses to fly, if you will. And I personally, I think the pilot community generally thinks you're not safe if you're not flying regularly. So without those justifications to fly regularly, I was looking for a good reason. Good morning, thanks for calling the Tire Depot. This is Jeff, how may I help you? At my store, I own the Tire Depot, or one of the owners of the Tire Depot. I had a customer. I was having this very conversation about running out of excuses to fly, and she told me about an organization called Pilots and Paws and asked me to please check into it. She's not a pilot, but she was rescue-minded and just said it's just a great organization. So I looked it up, and so the main focus of the Pilots and Paws website is their forum where users are registered and you can communicate on there. Rescues, people with animals can request flights, not limited to dogs at all, it's any kind of animals. The entire organization is a registered charity, and the marriage of pilots and the animals that are being transferred was something that was probably stumbled upon by accident. The founder's name is Debbie Boyes. She lives in North Carolina, and a little bit over 10 years ago, she had lost a Doberman Pinscher that she loved and found a couple in Florida that were adoptable and went about trying to figure out, how do I get these dogs from Florida? She had a friend that owned an airplane and said, hey, would you mind flying down and getting these dogs for me? And her friend said, sure, I'll do that. So he flies down, picks the dogs up, flies home. And she said, boy, that just was remarkably easy. I wonder if there's not an opportunity to maybe have pilots do this. So at this point, there are many thousands of users. You want to just walk him out to the ramp and we'll load him up and go from there?
Come here. I had the pleasure of taking care of Nelson last night. Nelson is actually from Lake Charles, Louisiana. He's on his way to Chattanooga, Tennessee today, courtesy of Pilots and Paws pilot Jeff Wall. I got involved with Pilots and Paws through a friend, and recognizing that there was much value in the service that he was providing. And it just seemed like a very easy, simple thing to do, which made a really big difference. And that is by fostering a puppy or a dog or a cat that was in transit. It's no cost to me. I got a chance to love on a puppy or a kitten that can continue to share their love with people.
I initially went on the Pilots and Paws message board and looked for flights that were going through the area or waited for emails. I've flown for about a dozen rescuers that I know very well, that are organized, that know what they're doing. And at this point, the majority of my flights come via direct request. I don't ever have a Thursday off when I don't have somebody asking me to fly. I usually have 3 or 4 or 5 people that are asking if there's any possibility I can squeeze it in. If I happen to be going out to one destination with animals, it's great if I can pick more up and bring them back the other direction, or if I can make a stop along the way and pick up an additional animal and carry them. I just like to do that. It's just more efficient.
Okay, now this is actually the first Pilots and Paws transport for me. Usually I transport by car, but this is the first one coming in by air. You know, a lot of these dogs that I transport going across country, it takes 2 to 3 days to, you know, everybody volunteer on a leg, and they have overnights, 2 or 3 overnights, so it's a long process, but if you can do it by plane, that is great.
This is Latte, and she's going to temporary foster in Mississippi where she'll get spayed. I got her fully vetted here. We couldn't get her spayed because she was getting on a plane too soon. And then she'll go to a longer term foster in Oklahoma where they'll get her ready for her forever family. And she's just a doll.
I'll be honest, I got into this from a flying perspective, but I didn't realize just how much I was going to enjoy meeting the people involved in rescue. I've met some fantastic people that have become some of my very best friends, and just honest, caring, not your typical people. It's just been a real nice experience, the people I've met doing this. It's just a fantastic hobby. It's something that I truly love. It's an engaging hobby. And when you're in the cockpit, you're very, very busy. You don't have time to worry about the stresses of home life and worry about what's going on at work and whatnot. You're engaged in the moment. Your job is flying the airplane. It's nice. It gets you away from stresses of life.
One of the most favorite things about being involved with Pilots and Paws is knowing that it's making a difference in the lives of not only the animals, but the people that are adopting them, because I believe that animals make a huge difference in the lives of people.
I've discovered that flying volunteer missions is actually the very reason I fly. It's the only reason I fly. I mean, with the exception of 2 or 3 flights a year that Cynthia and I take, it's all of my flying now. And that's not an accident. It's just a very cool thing to have a day off, to do something I love, but also doing something that helps other people.
Well, here at the Hattiesburg Zoo, they do a very good job of keeping the displays educational for the folks who visit the zoo, but also keeping the animals in as close to as possible a natural environment. And one of the big reasons for that is the guy we're talking to right here. He is the education manager at the Hattiesburg Zoo. This is Jeremy Compton. And friend, who's your friend?
I did bring a friend along. This here is Annie, and Annie is a 7-foot-long red-tailed boa. She's only 5 years old, and she's going to keep growing until she gets to be about 12 feet long.
This is not the kind of thing that I want to take home as a pet, but I understand people do try this out every once in a while, like a boa or some kind of exotic animal.
Yes, they definitely do, and it takes a lot of research to take care of these animals properly. A lot of times what will happen is the people will get it thinking it's a cute animal, and they are. I mean, she's adorable, but they'll end up seeing how much care it takes, how expensive it is, and they're not able to provide that. So we have 23 individual animals here who have been given to us, donations. They've been rescued from houses. One of them was actually found in a dumpster.
So if someday I came up with the idea of to have a baby tiger at the house, I should kind of think this thing through?
Yes, and the answer should be no.
Okay, good. Besides that, where do you get tiger food anyway? Speaking of animals that have been taken from their natural environment, we have a story about that, but it has kind of a happy ending because these animals have found a sanctuary because of some very caring and very knowledgeable and also some very brave people.
Cedar Hills is a nonprofit animal sanctuary. We're closed to the public, and we're home to over 250 rescued animals, from regular dogs and cats all the way to lions, tigers. So we're like a retirement home. After they've had a hard start, a rough beginning, been mistreated by people, or whatever their story is, we're their home for life.
Almost every single animal we have here has come from an abused or neglected situation that they needed a forever home for, and we provide that for them here. To see these animals come from some of the situations that they have been in before we get them here, that you would think that they would never trust a human again. And to see them respond and to adapt, it's truly amazing.
Our big cats were either privately owned from a roadside zoo or another sanctuary closing. So we've had some that have been abused with pepper spray. They've been sprayed in the eyes so many times that they're partially blind. We've got a couple that cattle prods have been used on them, fire extinguishers, things to make them behave or do what they're supposed to do.
Come here. Hi, baby. Hi. Oh, just a good morning, girl. You're ready for breakfast, aren't you? I know.
Some of their backgrounds are pretty horrific, but today, I mean, life is good for the big cats here. Working with them so much, you get to appreciate and have a relationship with them, but they find their ways to remind you that they are powerful predators. I mean, they're hyper intelligent and they're built to be predators. So we are a no contact facility for that reason. We don't ever touch, we don't ever go in the pen with them.
The older female bobcat we have, which was raised by people in an apartment. She had never even been in the rain or anything before she got here, which really killed me to have to put her just in a pen that day because it was raining terribly bad that day. Bobcats are very, very skittish. They are nocturnal by nature, so we alter their daily habits by feeding them in the mornings, but they've all responded very well to that.
You guys ready to eat?
Kay McElroy, she's the one who started this place 30 years ago without a thought of it becoming a sanctuary. Kay loves to read the newspaper, and one of her favorite things to do is to go through the classifieds. And she came upon an ad of a man who was selling a cougar for $1,000, and he lived not too far from here. What she found was a young cougar chained in a cage, malnourished, not doing well at all, and she thought, I've got to help this animal. She started very much in earnest trying to find a place for him to go, which she later named him Zach. The zoos couldn't take it. It didn't know its breeding or anything. There was no rehabilitation. So she set about learning what she could and built an enclosure herself. And in that, it sowed the roots for Cedar Hill.
We're one of the only sanctuaries in the United States that house domestic cats and exotic cats.
This is our senior and disabled cat house. We do have cats in here that are blind. We have cats in here that have 3 legs, have back leg issue joints that doesn't work properly. The thing about all of these cats that really probably get to us is that they do not know they're handicapped. And if they do, they don't show it. Stevie is totally blind. He doesn't have any eyeballs. His senses, his hearing, his smell is like double and triple probably any of the other cats. He can swat a fly and get it, follow birds with his face because he hears it. When he's at the bottom of the hill and you shake the bucket for treat time, he flies up through here and goes through the cat door without running into it.
They're the only big cat sanctuary in Mississippi, and they're one of the top 15 in the United States. And that's in Mississippi. We're known for being the bottom of the barrel in a lot of stuff, but when it comes to something like that, we have one of the greatest sanctuaries in the United States. And I just want to be a part of it just by helping financially and because they're such good people. I mean, they save lions, tigers, cougars, bobcats, regular cats, dogs, even pigs, even birds. And most of these animals have nowhere else to go. If it wasn't for Cedar Hill, these animals would be dead.
This little guy back behind me here, this is a lemur. And unfortunately, we're going to have to leave you with the lemurs because we're out of time. If you'd like information about anything you've seen in the show, contact us at mpbonline.org/Mississippi Roads. And make sure you like our Mississippi Public Broadcasting Facebook page. Till next time, I'm Walt Grayson, and I'll be seeing you on Mississippi Roads.
Mississippi Roads is made possible in part by the generous support of viewers like you. Thank you.